Let's break something down right now. When a man stops texting, most women instantly think, what did I do wrong? The overthinking begins. You start replaying the last conversation in your head, analyzing every word you sent, second-guessing yourself, and sometimes even blaming yourself for something you don't even understand. But here's the reality. His silence is not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of his priorities, his mindset, and his emotional availability. Most people walk around thinking that the way someone treats them is a direct indicator of their own value. But that's a flawed perspective. A man's lack of response doesn't mean you're not good enough, pretty enough, smart enough, or interesting enough. It means that for whatever reason, he is choosing not to engage at this moment. And that choice, that's about him. Now, let's go deeper. There are countless reasons why a man might not be responding, and none of them have to do with you not being worthy of attention. Some men are emotionally unavailable. Maybe he's dealing with personal struggles, past traumas, or career pressures that consume his mental space. A man who is emotionally unavailable often avoids deep connection, even when he's attracted to you. It's not about whether he likes you or not. It's about his inability to show up consistently in a relationship. And no amount of overanalyzing, waiting, or playing it cool will change that. Then there's the disinterested man. This is the one that's hard to accept, but it's one of the most important truths to understand. If he's not making the effort, it's because he doesn't feel the need to. Harsh? Maybe. But liberating? Absolutely. Because the moment you internalize this truth, you free yourself from the exhausting cycle of chasing and waiting. If he wanted to talk to you, he would. If he wanted to see you, he'd make it happen. When a man genuinely desires a connection with you, nothing, not his schedule, not his phone battery, not his workload, will stop him from reaching out. But let's talk about the men who don't even realize they're pulling away. Some men simply aren't aware that their lack of communication is affecting you. Maybe he assumes everything is fine. Maybe he's just caught up in his own world and isn't even thinking about how his silence makes you feel. Men don't attach the same weight to texting as women do. To them, it's just a tool, not a form of emotional connection. So while you're sitting there wondering why he's pulling away, he might just be thinking, I'll text when I have something to say. No drama. No overthinking, no emotional turmoil. Now, let's address the dangerous trap most women fall into, trying to fix it. When he stops responding, you instinctively want to find a way to pull him back in. Maybe you send a follow-up message, trying to sound casual. Maybe you try to spark his interest again by posting a story you hope he'll see. Maybe you even get angry and demand answers. But here's the thing. Forcing someone to communicate never leads to real connection. If you feel like you have to chase, convince, or remind someone to be present in your life, you're already fighting a losing battle. This is where self-worth comes in. A woman who knows her value doesn't wait around questioning her desirability just because a man isn't responding. She understands that his actions, or lack thereof, are about him, not her. She doesn't take it personally because she knows that a man who truly values her will show up without hesitation. She recognizes that a man's inconsistency is a red flag, not a mystery to solve. It all comes down to emotional responsibility. You are responsible for your happiness, your confidence, and your sense of self-worth. The moment you make someone else's actions define how you feel about yourself, you give away your power. You allow someone else, someone who isn't even putting in the effort, to dictate your mood, your confidence, and your sense of peace. So let's shift the focus. Instead of spending energy trying to decode his behavior, start asking yourself better questions. Do I even want a man who makes me feel uncertain? Do I want to be with someone who isn't showing up for me consistently? When you start viewing yourself as the prize, you stop settling for people who treat you like an option. When you realize that the right man will never leave you feeling confused, you stop wasting time on the ones who do. It's not about playing games or pretending you don't care. It's about genuinely shifting your mindset. When you understand that his silence is about his own capacity, his own priorities, and his own level of interest, you take the weight off your shoulders. You stop overanalyzing. You stop waiting by the phone. You stop allowing his actions to define your self-worth. Because the truth is, the right man will always make you feel seen, valued, and secure. And if he's not texting back, that's his problem, not yours. One of the biggest reasons women feel frustrated, anxious, or even rejected when a man doesn't text back is that they assume men view communication the same way they do. But here's the truth. Men and women communicate for completely different reasons. Understanding this difference will change everything about the way you see texting, dating, and relationship. Let's start with how women communicate. For most women, texting is about connection. It's a way to feel close, to bond, to maintain intimacy. When a woman texts, she's not just exchanging information, she's reinforcing the emotional link between her and the person on the other end. That's why you might send a text just to say, "Good morning, thinking of you," or "How was your day?" It's not because you need an answer. It's because the act of reaching out feels like nurturing the relationship. Now let's flip it to how men operate. Men view communication as a tool. They use it when they need something, when they have a goal, or when there's a clear reason to reach out. A man doesn't text just to chat the way women do. He texts with purpose. That purpose might be to set up a date, to ask a question, or to respond to something specific. If he doesn't feel like there's a pressing need to text, he might not even think about doing it at all. Not because he's lost interest, not because he's playing games, but because in his mind, nothing has changed. This is where the disconnect happens. A woman sees silence as emotional distance. A man sees silence as neutral. She assumes his lack of response means he's upset, disinterested, or pulling away. But in his mind, he might just be going about his day, not realizing that she's overanalyzing his lack of texts. Here's another key difference. Women maintain relationships through conversation, while men maintain relationships through action. If a woman likes someone, she'll want to talk to them regularly, whether through texting, calls, or in person. The frequency of conversation is how she gauges the strength of the relationship. But men, they gauge relationships differently. A man can go a day, 2 days, even a week without texting and still feel exactly the same about you, because in his mind, the connection hasn't changed unless something major happens. Think about the way men interact with their closest friends. 2 guys can go weeks without talking, and when they finally do, they pick up right where they left off. There's no panic, no questioning, no overthinking. It's just understood that the friendship is intact, whether they're talking constantly or not. A lot of men apply this same logic to dating. They assume that if they like you, and they've already shown that, then nothing else needs to be reinforced through constant texting. Now, does this mean that texting habits don't matter at all? Of course not. A man who is genuinely interested in you will reach out, but it's important to recognize that his texting frequency is not always a measure of his feelings. Some men prefer quality over quantity. They'd rather have a meaningful, in-person conversation than an ongoing text thread that feels like an obligation. This is where many women make a crucial mistake. They assume that if a man isn't texting enough, they need to step in and fill the gap. So they start overcompensating, sending more texts, asking more questions, trying to keep the conversation alive. But when you do this, you're not letting the relationship develop naturally. You're forcing a form of connection that he may not even realize you need. Instead of focusing on how often he texts, start paying attention to how he shows up in other areas. Does he make plans to see you? Does he follow through? Does he listen when you talk? These actions will tell you far more about his level of interest than how quickly he replies to a text. Another mistake women make is assuming that a man who doesn't text frequently is automatically losing interest. That's not always the case. Some men are just wired differently. Some men actually dislike texting altogether. Others might be focused on work, hobbies, or personal goals and simply don't prioritize digital communication the way women do. This doesn't mean he's not interested. It means he expresses interest in a way that might look different from what you expect. That's why the key isn't to force him into constant communication. It's to observe his patterns. If a man was once texting all the time and suddenly stops, that's a shift in behavior worth paying attention to. But if he's always been a sporadic texter and continues to show up for you in other ways, that's just how he operates. The key is alignment. If you need daily texts to feel secure, and he's the kind of guy who only texts when necessary, then you might not be compatible. But if you understand his communication style and can meet in the middle, then you won't waste time worrying over things that aren't personal. This is why emotional intelligence is so powerful in dating. When you understand the fundamental differences in how men and women communicate, you stop taking things so personally. You stop assuming silence means rejection. You stop feeling the need to chase, fix, or force something that should flow naturally. Because at the end of the day, a man who is truly invested in you will communicate in a way that feels right for him, but also respects your needs. And when you can recognize the difference between a man who's just a different kind of communicator and a man who's genuinely uninterested, you save yourself a lot of unnecessary stress. There is an undeniable force that separates women who effortlessly attract love and respect from those who find themselves constantly chasing it. Energy. Not just any energy, but high value energy. This is the kind of energy that draws people in, commands attention, and makes the right men step up without you having to beg for it. And most women don't even realize that they are pushing men away, not because of how they look, how they text, or even what they say, but because of the energy they're giving off. Let's talk about low-value energy first. This is the energy of desperation, neediness, and insecurity. It's the energy that makes you feel like you have to win a man over, prove your worth, or convince someone to choose you. You know this energy when you feel it. It's that anxious, restless state you go into when you're waiting for a text, checking your phone every few minutes, wondering what he's thinking. It's the energy that makes you question yourself when he's distant and makes you feel like you have to do something to get him to respond. Low-value energy creates a chaser's mindset. And the moment you start chasing, you lose your power. Because what happens when someone chases? The other person naturally pulls away. This isn't just about dating, it's about human nature. When we feel like someone is trying too hard to get our attention, we take them for granted. We assume they'll always be there. Their presence no longer excites us. It becomes an expectation. Now, let's flip the script and talk about high-value energy. A high-value woman doesn't chase, she attracts. She doesn't beg for attention, she commands it effortlessly. She knows deep in her core that she is the prize. And because of that, her energy is magnetic. People, especially men, can feel this energy before she even says a word. It's in the way she carries herself, the way she moves through life, and most importantly, the way she responds to things. So what does this look like in real life? A woman with high-value energy isn't fazed by whether or not a man texts back. She's too busy living a fulfilling life to sit around waiting for someone else to validate her. When a man pulls away, she doesn't panic. She simply shifts her focus back to herself. She doesn't send a series of texts trying to regain his attention. She lets him feel her absence, not in a manipulative way, but in a way that says, I am not someone who waits around for half-hearted effort. This energy shifts the dynamic entirely. Suddenly, the man is the one wondering where she is, what she's doing, why she's not chasing him like other women do. He begins to realize that if he doesn't step up, he might lose her. And that's when everything changes. Because men are wired to pursue, to seek out what feels valuable, to work for what they truly want. But here's the most important part. High value energy isn't about pretending. It's not about playing games or acting like you don't care when you really do. It's about actually becoming the kind of woman who doesn't need external validation to feel secure. It's about shifting your mindset so that you are so fulfilled within yourself that whether or not a man texts back is the least interesting thing happening in your life. Think about the women you admire, whether in real life, in movies, or in history. The ones who seem to own every room they walk into. The ones who don't just attract men, but also opportunities, friendships, success. These women are not constantly worrying about whether someone is giving them attention. They are focused on building an extraordinary life. And that's exactly why people are drawn to them. So, how do you cultivate this kind of energy? 1, shift from external validation to internal confidence. The reason so many women feel anxious in dating is that they are looking for a man to give them a sense of worthiness. They want his text, his call, his attention to confirm that they are desirable. But here's the thing. You don't need anyone to confirm your worth. The more you validate yourself, the less you crave it from others. 2, stop over-investing in people who haven't earned it. Low-value energy happens when you give too much too soon to someone who has not shown that they deserve that level of emotional investment. A high-value woman observes before she invests. She doesn't assume a man is worth her time just because he showed interest. He has to prove it consistently. 3, prioritize yourself, your goals, and your happiness. When you are deeply invested in your own life, your energy shifts. You're not sitting around waiting for a text because you're busy building something meaningful. Maybe that's your career, your passion, your friendships, your fitness, your spiritual growth. Whatever it is, when your life is full, you naturally become more attractive. Or master the art of detachment. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you are not dependent on any one outcome. You enjoy the connection, but you don't cling to it. You appreciate someone's presence, but you are not afraid of their absence. This energy is powerful because it tells the world, I am whole on my own. 5, know your boundaries and enforce them. A high-value woman doesn't tolerate inconsistent behavior. If a man disappears for days and comes back with a casual hey, she doesn't respond eagerly. She sets the standard that she expects respect, consistency, and effort, not through ultimatums, but through how she moves. And here's the most fascinating thing. When you embody this kind of energy, you stop attracting men who play games, breadcrumb, or give half-hearted effort. Because those men instinctively know they can't get away with it. Instead, you attract men who step up, who recognize your value, and who treat you with the respect and effort you deserve. This is the power of high-value energy. One of the biggest traps women fall into is justifying a man's inconsistency. When he doesn't text back, you tell yourself, maybe he's just busy. Maybe he's not a big texter. Maybe I should reach out again. You go back and forth, analyzing his behavior, making excuses, and trying to find ways to keep him interested. But let me tell you something powerful. The right man will never leave you in a state of confusion. Confusion is a sign. It's not an invitation to try harder. It's not a challenge to decode. It's a message. A man who is truly interested in you will not create emotional uncertainty. He won't leave you guessing, wondering, or questioning where you stand with him. He won't go days without texting and expect you to just accept it. He won't act warm one moment and cold the next. Because when a man genuinely values you, he makes sure you know it. Let's break this down. Men who are interested versus men who are just keeping you around. There are only 2 types of men when it comes to dating. The man who is truly interested in you. The man who enjoys your attention but isn't serious about you. The first man makes you feel secure. He reaches out consistently, not because he has to, but because he wants to. He makes an effort to see you, call you, and make you feel valued. He doesn't leave gaps of silence expecting you to just understand. He is clear about his feelings, and even if he's not a poet or overly romantic, he shows his interest through his actions. The second man, he's the one who keeps you on an emotional roller coaster. He texts just enough to keep you hooked, but disappears when you start expecting more. He's hot and cold. Sometimes he makes you feel amazing, and other times he leaves you completely confused. And what do most women do? They hold on to the good moments and ignore the inconsistency. They convince themselves that if he acts this way sometimes, then maybe he just needs time, space, or the right approach. But here's the truth. Inconsistency is a decision. A man who wants you in his life will be consistent because he knows that without consistency, he risks losing you. A man who keeps you confused is either not serious about you or doesn't respect your time enough to be clear about his intentions. Either way, he's not the man for you. Stop making excuses for his behavior. Women are natural nurturers. We want to believe that if we just give enough love, understanding, and patience, we can change a situation. But you can't change a man's interest level by overcompensating for his lack of effort. If he's not texting back, you might think, maybe he's going through something. Maybe he just isn't good at communication. Maybe he's scared of his feelings. But let's be honest. Do you really think that if he met his dream woman, someone he was absolutely head over heels for, he wouldn't make the effort? Do you think he would forget to text back if he was genuinely afraid of losing you? The right man won't need you to rationalize his actions. He won't make you sit there questioning if you're good enough, if you should text first, if you should play it cool, or act like you don't care. A man who wants you in his life makes it obvious. Now, some men will say, I'm just not a big texter. That's fine. Some people genuinely prefer in-person connection. But if a man values you, he will adjust to meet your needs. He may not text constantly, but he will check in because he understands that communication is an important part of building a relationship. The excuse of I'm just not a texter becomes invalid when you realize that this same man texts his friends, his coworkers, and responds to social media. If he has time for those things, but can't make time for you, he's making a choice. A man's effort tells you everything you need to know. Women are often told to wait and see when it comes to dating. Wait and see if he texts back. Wait and see if he asks you out. Wait and see if he steps up. But why would you waste time waiting for someone to possibly show up when there are men out there who will gladly put in the effort without hesitation? Effort is one of the clearest indicators of a man's feelings. When a man wants something, whether it's a job, a car, a goal, he goes after it with intention. The same applies to relationships. A man who truly values you won't leave you wondering. He won't make you work for his attention. He won't disappear for days and expect you to be okay with it. He won't be inconsistent, then act surprised when you start to pull away. You don't need to remind a high-quality man to put in effort. He does it naturally because he doesn't want to lose you. You should never have to convince someone to choose you. Let's get real. If you're sitting around strategizing how to get him to text you, that's a red flag in itself. The right relationship doesn't require mind games, manipulation, or constant questioning. The right man is someone who brings you peace, not confusion. Imagine this scenario. You're texting a man who always makes you feel secure. When you send a message, you don't have to wonder if he'll respond. When he says he'll call, he actually follows through. When he makes plans, he doesn't cancel at the last minute. How does that feel? Stable, comfortable, safe. Now compare that to the man who is inconsistent. One day he's showering you with attention, and the next he's pulling away. One moment you think things are progressing, and the next he's acting distant. How does that feel? Anxious, uncertain, emotionally draining? Which experience do you want for yourself? The biggest mistake women make is thinking they can change the inconsistent man into the committed one. But you can't. You can only choose the kind of man who is already showing up the way you deserve. A man's effort will always tell you everything you need to know.